for years I've wanted a Jaguar XKRS, and there's only like 100 of them that were made, and it's 550 horsepower, 500 pound-feet of torque, phenomenal engine, just beautiful sounds to it, and I can't justify spending $60,000 on a car that sits in my garage for months at a time. So I could not pull the trigger on that at all.
What if you sold your other cars?
Then it would probably be an even up. But then Erica would kick my rear end every time she wanted to go use the car, and I was out, doing something. Plus, there's like 10 floors in our park. Well, there's only like 7 floors where you can park a car. So now, whenever I step outside, I have about a 50% chance of having the car on the floor. So that way, if Erica doesn't tell me where she parked a car, I can still go outside and get to a car. I just don't know which one it's going to be.
So you just have to like sort of pick a random floor, and you'll probably have a car on it.
Yes.
That's a car for every floor. There you go.
Then it's just kind of like a nice surprise. You walk out, no, I think I'll take the Audi.
Damn it, this is the Geo floor. Crap.
Have a scooter out there. Yeah. Yeah, that's so yeah, I could not pull the trigger, and I want that so bad. It's the exact color I've always wanted, French Racing Blue. Let me go pull it up so I've got the link to it, and it's probably just going to make me sad. Jaguar XK.
You could buy it and then put it in one of those storage units and just drive it up right in there.
Yeah, right.
And then we pay it. They could be on Storage Wars. We found a Jaguar.
That would actually be awesome. I would love to have it at my dad's. God, it's still there. Only 10,000 miles. Let me put the link to it.
How do you not buy that? How do you not buy the car of your dreams?
It's $65,000, and I'm like,
I'll work some more nighttime gigs. It's cool. I want you to have this. I want you to live your dream.
You can just fire me, Brent. Have Eric work some extra time. That should be enough.
Yeah, and plus too, it's one of those cars where I know they're going to always be for sale. This isn't like a Bugatti Veyron or something where there's only going to be a few of them and it's going to be hard. This car will come available again. It's a matter of time, and then hopefully I'll be living in San Diego or something where I actually have garage space and I have reason to take it out places. But
you'll be living in New York and driving Ernie's ashes around in the passenger seat. Your 3-block trip to a Starbucks.
We still have the conversation all the time. Like, we're like, when do we think Ernie's going to pass away? Because if Ernie's going to pass away, Eric is like, why don't you go give her a chocolate croissant or something? Speed her up. That's just mean, man.
Be honest, do you have an Ernie death pool?
We should. We should totally have a Deadpool for Ernie.
I'm not joining that because that's cruel, but you can do it.
No, I think she's going to be around for another 4 years. I think it's going to be.
Wow.
Yeah. Because she has no physical problems. She runs every day. She has a great healthy appetite. She hasn't been to the vet due to a problem in probably 2 years now. So,
wow.
Yeah.
She's going to be one of those aging gracefully dogs where they lose teeth and the tongue falls out and eyes get weird and blue. And
she's already down to half her teeth. I mean, she's got half the teeth she ever had. So
she's got more than me. I've only got these front ones.
Whenever it comes time to chewing food, it looks kind of awkward because I have to hover my mouth around. Oh, this is going to be an interesting pre-show this week. I listen to other podcasts. I'm like,
they just go out like this.
Better.
That's it.
All right, Brent first.
Sorry.
Yeah, no thanks. I used to do cats. I used to have cats before I met, or when I met Erica, and then ended up giving my cat away. But I had a couch that smelled thoroughly like cat pee, and that was, when you want to get someone to live with you, that stuff's just got to stop. That just doesn't work.
I had a roommate in 2000, I forget which one, but he adopted a cat, and the cat immediately got some horrible urinary tract infection, and it was so bad that they had to castrate him. So he bought this male cat. They had to castrate. This is like after 3 months, they had to castrate, and it was like $6,000 altogether in vet bills. And I was like, dude, $250? You are free and clear. But he's like the sweetest. He's like the sweetest guy. He got the cat fixed, and then the cat repaid him by peeing all over everything.
Well, I imagine
But he went out. He had to put plastic on the couch because the cat would just hop up on the couch, pee on the couch. Like the cat would still pee on the plastic, but at least it was the plastic. But oh man, this thing was a nightmare.
Single guy, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I moved in with him, I got some chick to take it. It was beautiful. No more pee.
I was saying, it could be a good thing for the guy in that you kind of like, women are like, oh, if he'll take care of that cat, he'll take care of me when I'm old and gray. Oh, yeah, better man
Cat
than
urine
I.
is, I think, the worst thing in the world. It's just awful.
Yeah.
Pretty rough.
Yeah, it's not good.
We have a question. Which TV show are you guys looking forward to most this season? Oh, that's a really good question.
It is.
Yeah.
Richie?
I don't know. Daredevil season 3? Can I say that?
Of course you can. It's our webcast.
What about Westworld? Are you looking forward to that at all, or do you think it looks dumb?
It looks interesting. I want to hold off until some of the reviews come in before the investment.
Yeah. We've been watching Mr. Robot on Brent's advice. We're on season 2, episode 9 or something. We're almost caught up. But man, that show is great.
It is. And it's exactly like what we do in our daily life. I mean, if anything could capture exactly what working with databases is like, that show nails it.
Yes. It is a lot of me yelling at myself in my head with someone else and arguing. So, it's totally the point.
Imaginary voice. I'm looking forward to finishing Mr. Robot. I'm still on season 1, but Survivor is probably the big one for me. I'm huge into Survivor. And Dual Survivor, too. I love loving that.
That's a good one.
The lineup's been good. What else has been good recently? All about Car Matchmaker with Spike Feresten. Car Matchmaker, he's a guy who wrote the Soup Nazi episode for Seinfeld. He's written a bunch of really classic TV shows. And he takes a person every show and listens to what they have for a car and what they want out of their car, and then shows them 3 different cars and helps them to choose one. Sounds kind of cheesy, but it's really, the cars he gets, it's not just new cars, it's old vintage cars and trucks and all kinds of stuff.
It's House Hunters for cars.
It's House Hunters for cars. Yep. But with a whole lot more humor, like he doesn't take himself seriously. For example, one guy this past week said he wanted a really nice stereo, so Spike took him to a lowrider convention. Understand that this was a gay cowboy who runs a tanning salon, and took him to a lowrider convention in the middle of LA and introduced him to a bunch of guys. And at the end of it, checking out stereos and whatnot, the cowboy was like, I thought they'd be awful people, like, be ready to kill me or something like that. They're great. I had such a good time. I'm like, good. So he goes, I never would have gone here.
Oh, look at the lowrider. It's my people.
You're terrifyingly good at that.
Like I said, it's my people.
We should have an accent session during the class in Seattle. Well, it's a quarter after. We might as well go ahead and get started. Let's see what we got here. Folks, feel free to type in your questions over in the questions pane and go to webinar, and we will work through them one by one. Don't hold your questions till the end, because people inevitably end up putting in their questions right now. Yours won't get answered. So
Speak up, fellow humans.
Speak up, fellow humans.
Fellow humans.
Mandy says, how can I look at the execution plan of a table-valued function? I know there's drawbacks. I just can't replace this one at the moment, and I'm trying to figure out a way to improve its performance. So how do you find the execution plans for table-valued functions?
You can get the estimated plan of whatever query calls it, and it'll have a little box underneath that shows what the table-valued or what the function does.
And when we say estimated plan, is that a different shape from the actual plan that we'll execute, or what's different between the term estimated plan and actual plan?
Great question. It doesn't give you any of the actual values that get returned. It just gives you what SQL estimates. So SQL goes to the optimization point, goes to the optimization stuff up to the point where it would actually execute the query. It doesn't actually execute it. and just gives you the plan with the basics. Like, it's like, we think this many rows are going to come back, so we're going to do this, this, and this to get you your query. But I know that works with scalar valued functions. If you're talking about multi-statement table valued functions, I think that also works. But with a table valued function, I'm not sure if that gives. I don't think that if it's an actual table valued function, I don't think you get the separate little execution show beneath.
Yeah, I believe you only get it on estimated plans. The other way you can do it that's really useful is SP Blitz Cache. SP Blitz Cache, when you run that and sort by executions, there's a sort order parameter. If you sort by executions, it'll tell you the queries that ran the most often. Most likely it's going to be your function. One of the top 10 will be your function. Next question, do you guys have any good tips on preparing for the Senior DBA course next week? Yes, if you're in America, get caffeine because it starts at 3 a.m. Central Time. I am certainly going to be giving myself some caffeine. The best thing I can tell you, so this one's targeted at the European audience. It starts at 9 a.m. in London. The best advice I can give you is go run SP Blitz to go look at all of the gotchas on your SQL servers. But then the really big one is go get our download pack, our first responder kit, and in there there's a worksheet for your RPO and RTO, your recovery point objective and recovery time objective. Spend some time getting to know that form and thinking about what the values are for your most mission critical SQL servers, because a lot of what Senior DBAs do is driven around RPO and RTO. Next question, what's the easiest way to check for queries that are blocking my nightly stored procedure? Please don't tell me I have to be at my desk at midnight.
Turn off your index maintenance, because I feel like that's what it is.
Yeah.
Aside from that, I would actually turn on the blocked process report for that.
And have you actually used the block process report?
To some degree, with some success, yeah. Michael Swart has that block process report reader, which is really handy too, which is clearly the best way to do that, because I would never do that on my own. But that, or you could log SP who was active to a table, and then you can get the blocking stuff from that as well.
Oh, I love that even more. If you go to brentozar.com/responder, there is a article by Tara Kaiser on how you log SP who is active to a table. SP who is active is a great stored procedure by Adam Mechanic that tells you what's going on right now, and it includes execution plans too. You can run that every minute, and I would just set up a scheduled job to run it every minute during the time window that you care about during your nightly job. That's fantastic. And block process report viewers, cool too. Paul asks, I am building a distribution server to handle replication between our local site and a data center. How and what accounts would you set up locally and on or the domain? There are going to be a couple separate domains involved. Any other advice on setting up a distribution server? Also, will you start reading these questions ahead of time before you start saying them out loud? Just kidding. That last part is not in there. I don't know. I have no good advice on that whatsoever. Any of you guys? No?
Nada.
Nope. Yeah, we got nothing on that. If you go to Amazon and look at the books on replication, there's one by Kendall Van Dyke. That would be the one that I would recommend there. Or just post this one on Stack Exchange. It's actually a really good question for Stack Exchange. But break it up into a couple pieces. Have one about the security and another one about best practices around that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really, really specific situation, and I don't think you're going to find that covered like in a textbook example. Like what you're doing is like even like a bit out of bounds for what most people do with replication. And I've seen some like crazy merge replication strategies, and that's bananas.
And there's nothing to say it's wrong with it. Totally okay. It's just unusual.
Yeah.
Next question, which source control software do you recommend? Ooh, Richie, that's a good question.
Now, Brent, I know you're always in source control, and you love source control, and I know you've got a couple of your favorites.
Absolutely. Visual Source Safe is by far and away the best product out there.
No.
Tells you.
No. I still have corruption nightmares from dealing with Visual SourceSafe. I go back, man. I go all the way back to CVS and Visual SourceSafe and all the other junk that we had back in the days. Git is by far the best these days. I know a lot of companies that still use TFS, and just to show you what the folks think about TFS, there's now a Git to TFS piece of software where you could use Git and then it moves it to TFS. So GitHub is free. It's really the best thing that's out there. It's great. We use it here. I use it personally off hours. Go to GitHub. Raw GitHub.
I hate source control. I hate it with a burning passion because it's hard, it's complex, dealing with merges and all this. And I've even grown to love Git. It's between the clients for it and the website, GitHub is fantastic. Fantastic's the wrong word. It's doable. It hardly sucks at all.
I like Git. I just wish that there was just like some big blaring sign that says you are working with this branch. Or like you branched from master, not from dev, or you did this, or like just something like yell at me, man. Just make it really obvious, because there's nothing worse than like doing something and being like like a half hour into it and then realizing like, oh, I branched from master and I'm gonna like break everything.
Damn it, Eric, you did it again. Stop doing this to me.
There needs to be a dumbed down version of GitHub for the rest of us, that just don't let me touch master, just let me work over in dev, force me to start a new branch, never allow me to commit directly to dev. Yeah, it's pretty insane.
Yeah, so for those of you who just want to get, I know you guys don't like this, but I use it all the time, and it's called SourceTree. It's a free editor by Atlassian to kind of help you with some Gitty stuff. So if you're more visual oriented as opposed to command line oriented, you could use SourceTree, and it helps kind of get over that. You still have to understand how Git works and how the Git process works, but once you get over that, you don't have to be command line typing it like you would in Git. So I use both. I'm command line, and I switch back to SourceTree when I just want to do a quick check-in, but check it out, SourceTree.
All right, folks, don't forget to type in your questions over there on the side and go to webinar. The next one we'll go tackle is, I've got an update query that runs. Whenever it runs, I get the little number of rows returned thing back in messages, and I think I'm only updating 500 rows, but it keeps saying 1,000 rows affected. Is there anything that will affect what it says the number of rows affected is?
Is there a trigger on the table?
I like that. That makes sense. Yeah, and someone else answers too in the Q&A. Someone else put in triggers, which means someone else has been burned by this as well.
I was thinking back to when I was writing that stupid trigger for the DBA days stuff, and I was updating. I was like, oh yeah, that's a lot of things. So what I tend to do is set no count on and just blindly put a print statement at the end of the trigger to tell me how many rows are affected by the trigger, so I know that I have a separation. So it's like, okay, the trigger affected this many rows on its own. So like that gives you the count of how many things.
Well, plus what I love about the print is that then people know that there was an actual trigger that was involved in execution.
Yeah, you just set something to row count, or then print rows affected by trigger, blah blah blah, and you can see exactly how many rows the trigger hit. In my case, it was like 250 million.
You could also start a clock at the beginning of the trigger, stop it again at the end, and say this number of milliseconds was burned up waiting for the trigger.
Yeah,
I'm joking.
Find a better way to do it.
Please don't do this. Please don't do this.
So what you could do is have your trigger kick off an extended event session to measure disk. Spit back all the information about the trigger. Don't do that.
Ouch. Yeah, so folks, we're out of questions. This is probably a first ever for office hours. Feel free to type in any questions that you've got, but as long as they're not asking questions, that means we get to ask questions. So I'm going to start asking Richie questions about Pace the Plan. So this week we went live with our new Pace the Plan in order to share execution plans online. What was the most surprising thing that you learned out of building Pace the Plan?
Gosh, there was a lot of things I had to learn. The biggest problem was uh, using the new technologies that I never used, right? So I never built really anything of substantial that's been in the cloud. And the hard part was I couldn't use any of the tools that I've used for 15 years on that. So C Sharp, MS SQL. We could have gone MS SQL, but we didn't. All the MVC, all the ASP.NET, all the stuff that I've really honed, and now it's just kind of second nature. I had to learn something new. So even the language, which was Node.js, which is JavaScript on the server, that is completely different than you would think that's JavaScript on the client. They're two different things. So even figuring out those nuances, figuring out how do I actually do processing in the cloud using AWS Lambda functions, and even to our own database. So we did the analysis and saying, hey, well, how much would it cost if we use DynamoDB versus SQL Server? What's the difference there? And we did all that work to try to figure out what would be the best bang for our buck for pace to plan. And if this is just a small little thing, we won't be out thousands of dollars because we're spinning up all these EC2 instances and the databases and all that stuff. So it was definitely an eye-opening to get into the cloud and figuring out, hey, what's this serverless thing and how does it work, and how do I connect my client into the server and write to the database and all that stuff. It took me a little bit longer than I expected to, but it was fun getting into and trying to figure out the problems and how to work around some of those things.
When you're learning a new language like you did for that, how much do you go out and look for example code versus how much do you try and just bang out yourself for the first time and see what you can do?
I mean, the difference between, I think, Node.js and kind of the more traditional languages like Java and C Sharp is that the community wants to install packages. So there's all these little packages that does all these little bits of code, and it's kind of understood that you would just go in and download a package that does it for you. So there's all these little bits of code out there that actually help you do certain things. So one of the big interesting things was we need to do a lot of XML parsing. We're pasting XML, we've got to read it, we've got to parse it, we've got to validate it, we've got to do all this stuff to it. There's nothing in Node that lets you do XML parsing. It's not there. So the community, yeah, it just says JSON mostly. But so the community has taken a C project and ported it over into Node, and we use that in order so that we could do all our XML processing. Whereas opposed to C# and JavaScript, it's just there. You don't have to think about it. So that's just kind of the paradigm for the Node community and how they tend to work. It's backfired on them because one guy pulled part of his, a few months ago, he pulled one of his packages from the library, and about 15,000 projects broke because they were using that one piece of code. So it is a fragile ecosystem, but it seems to work pretty well. And we're not
Wasn't
taking
that code
a ton
like one line too?
Yeah, it was a one-liner. It was, I think, pad right or pad left or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was silly. But again, that's the culture of Node, and that's kind of how they work. And that's how that community has decided to work. Not to say it's good or bad. That's just kind of the way it is.
All right, we got a few questions in. Mandy says, I'm thinking about going from Standard Edition to Enterprise Edition of SQL Server 2014. I know I'm not supposed to do a version upgrade in place. I know you guys don't like doing version upgrades because you don't have a backup plan. What about an edition upgrade? Would you be comfortable doing an in-place edition upgrade?
Yeah, I'm pretty amenable to that. I think that's probably the simplest way to do it. You don't really need much of a backup on that, unless something explodes.
You're taking an outage to do it, but it's going to be so short relative to building a whole new box that.
Because is it just a SKU, or because they don't really have to add anything? It's just kind of a SKU where they're just like, no, you can do all the cool stuff now. Welcome to the big kids table.
What you have to do is restart setup and then go up, down, left, right, BA, start. And then immediately it starts using the Enterprise Edition features.
When you're walking through the secret woods, it's left, up, down, then throw a boomerang.
This is where
That's
our
right.
transcriptionist is going to hate our guts.
You place a bomb on the far wall.
You have to kneel in front of the statue with the red orb, but it only opens if you have the fire chain. So.
And then make sure in Contra that you just stick with the spray gun. Don't change guns. The spray gun is the one you want to take through all of the levels. Oh, this is why we can't have nice things. Next question, is there a way to create fragmentation to the table? I want to test my index optimization solution, but when I hand my work to a QA team, I'm not seeing anything it needs to defrag. Oh man, we wrote code just like this. What'd you end up doing, Eric, in order to generate fragmentation?
So there are a couple approaches you could take. One is GUIDs. GUIDs will always be fragmented because they insert all out of order. Another thing that you can do is if you have, just like, date columns or not unique ascending ID columns, you can always just insert sort of a range of values into those over and over again, and they'll become not like massively fragmented, but they'll get pretty fragmented over time if you just sort of dump in, sort of just like random dates from sort of spreads of time or random numbers from spreads of time between a range, because you'll have to put, if like just keep dumping in the numbers 1 to 200, you're going to have to put numbers in all over the place in that index, and if it's the leading key of the index, then it's going to get kind of chopped up. Another thing that kind of works too is if you have longer text fields, is you can update those, and sometimes you get pages to move around that way too. You get page splits and whatnot.
And we're really focusing on building new tables and then dumping data into there, which what I would recommend for you if you're going to test defrags. You don't want to do it with existing tables because they just won't move around that much.
My big question for this fellow human is, why aren't you using Ola Hallengren's index defrag routine? Because it's free and it works really well. You have a real job. It's so helpful.
So olahallengren.com, ola.hallengren.com,
Yes.
OLA.HALLE.
I'm going to paste that in.
There you go. That's probably a good idea.
Brent falls off the spelling bee bus.
Boom. It has things like a timer on it, so it'll work for a certain number of minutes. It'll break out gracefully. It'll work on just the fields that you want, just the tables that you want, all kinds of things that are just spectacular. And it's totally open source, so you can take it and then change it if you want instead of writing a new one from scratch. He keeps it updated with new features and versions, all kinds of stuff.
It's also version edition aware too, so you're not going to try and do something crazy on 2012 that you can do on 2014. So.
So we have a fellow human asks, I have backup jobs running on my secondary for both the database and transaction logs. What's the best practice for doing backups on the primary? Well, based on
Tara.
Where are you, Tara Kaiser? Based on your terminology, I think you're using always-on availability groups. In that case, what I would actually recommend is always do your log backups on the primary, because if the business tells you we're not allowed to lose more than, say, 5 minutes of data or 10 minutes of data, if synchronization breaks between the primary and your secondaries, or just if it gets behind, the secondary may be backing up old log data. It may not have current data. So I'm always going to run my log backups on the primary. My fulls, I may be okay offloading to a secondary, since I can just go back to an older full backup and keep restoring all the transaction log sense. But whenever you back up from a secondary, there's two important things that you need to understand. One is that you have to license it, because offloading backups equates to offloading production work. And two means you have to run CheckDB on it, because if you're going to do a backup on something, you need to know that it's corruption-free. Just because you're doing CheckDB on the primary doesn't mean that the secondary where you're doing the backups is actually clean. Next question. Angie says, I see in my company, I'm seeing joins that joins are on multiple fields. So for example, I'm joining from person to address, and the joins in there are not just on ID, but on a couple of IDs or a couple of different key fields. Is there a name for this kind of join? Oh man, that's a really good question. I don't know if I've ever seen a name for this kind of, like compound keys or
like multi-join predicates or something.
Yeah, or multi-predicate joins, or
yeah.
I don't think I have ever seen a name for that.
No.
I used to just call them a join.
Yeah. But they're totally valid and reasonable, because a lot of times what happens is you'll find lazier developers who just know, oh, I have this key to this key, and then they get a bunch of duplicate data, and then they throw in a distinct rather than throwing in the appropriate join. So it's totally okay if you're joining on multiple keys. I just want to make sure that you know, all of the keys that you need for the join are indexed together, so that you're not, you know, having to key lookup to get, you know, do a predicate key lookup somewhere else, or, you know, do a nasty hash join, or have a filter later on in the query.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is there anything wrong with it? Not at all. Totally okay. Next question. On the webinar yesterday, I did a webinar for Idera on filtered indexes, index views, and computed columns.
Ooh, sexy.
Brent said, right, artisanal indexes. Brent said you had to use a special parameter for CheckDB whenever you have a filtered index. It was actually about indexed views, actually. I didn't get a chance to write it down. What was it, and do Ola Hollengren scripts do that? Yes, it is extended logical checks. Extended logical checks.
Oh.
We go through and build a copy of your indexed view, so it does take more time. It builds a copy of your indexed view and compares to what's actually in the indexed view. By default, CheckDB does not do that for you. So does it take longer? Yeah, absolutely.
I was going in the total opposite direction to that. I thought he wanted to just like skip over everything, and I was just like, physical only. Yeah.
So to explain, Erick's check does less work. Erick's check checks even less things, physical only, which is faster,
because
much faster.
Eric's checks used to have to go over like 50 terabytes of data a night, so Eric's checks had to go fast, get out of the way.
When you, because at the end of the day, if you have index view corruption, it just means data that's just means data that's going to come back isn't accurate. But you can totally recreate that by dropping the index view and recreating it. So when you're in Eric's position and you got 50 terabytes of data at night, you just can't check everything. It just doesn't work.
So I actually have a question about that, because so if an index view is corrupt, how likely is it that it is just the view and not the underlying data? Like, how would you, if you went to select from an index view and SQL is just like, no, corruption, what are the odds that it's the index view versus the underlying data or pages?
This is what's going to blow your mind. So there's a known bug in index views when you use things like the merge command. When you merge against the underlying tables, the indexed view isn't updated, or it's updated with nulls. So it's physically not corrupt. It's fine physically, but logically the data that's in it is corrupt. So when people do a select against it, they don't get errors. They don't get any corruption errors at all. It's just that the data that's coming back is wrong.
That's so bad.
To me, that's the worst kind.
It's not even indexed views, though. It's merge. Yeah. Right? Because merge
is only with indexed views.
Right, but merge on its own does all sorts of other stuff, like skip foreign key stuff, and just referential integrity kind of goes out the window in a few different cases. Aaron Bertrand, I don't know the link offhand, but he has a long list of merge bugs, and it's sad to look through them, like, because they're like years old, and you look through the list, and like so many of them are like closed as won't fix, closed as by design, still open, and you're just like looking through, like, oh god, like don't use merge. I beg of you, please don't.
And I love the functionality of merge. I love it. As a developer, it makes things a whole lot easier, especially when you're dealing with data warehousing stuff. But the bugs, it makes me scared.
And the syntax.
I could get used to the syntax. The syntax is weird, but I could get used to that. But bugs.
Paul says, what would you use besides merge? Unfortunately, it's plain old roll your own insert, update, and delete statements.
But but the nice thing about those is that you can optimize them separately. So like you don't have to worry about, does this whole merge work good, or you get to have 3 separate things that work, and you can fix them on their own and make sure they work on their own. You can batch them really well, which I'm a fan of.
So if you have even any slight interest in using merge, Google for merge and the name Aaron Bertrand, and there's a great huge 2-page long list of bugs that are open with the merge statement.
I'll just try to find the link while you guys talk.
There you go.
Brent, that's a feature, not a bug.
That's a feature.
They're features.
Corruption is a feature. Someone says I need pictures on my wall. Well, the catch with that is I use this for recording training videos, so it needs to be entirely green. The other walls in my office have lots of art. I have all kinds of crazy stuff, including, I still haven't mounted it yet, but I have a whole bunch of graphics from the video game Asteroid that I'm just going to stick across my wall. Plus, I have tires from an Audi. My office is like a garage now.
But from whose Audi? We don't know.
Well, it is in Chicago, you know. They kind of do that kind of thing.
It was parked on the street. That's just like giving permission.
I wish my office were that well put together. I ordered my desk, and my desk is coming, and a bookcase coming, but for now I just have some boxes and a telescope and a Dune poster hanging up behind me.
So the telescope, yeah. So do you do it from inside the place, or do you go up on a roof deck? What do you do?
Well, at our last apartment, we had roof access, and so we could go up to the roof and just look at stuff. And it's pretty, you know, I mean, you get the ambient light noise, so you can't see everything, but we had some pretty good views. Like there was one night we caught Jupiter with several moons really well, and there was one night where we caught Saturn with like you could make out the rings. So that was nice. We don't have roof access at this apartment, unfortunately. So I'm probably just going to keep the telescope around and stare at my neighbors creepily.
That's not a bad idea for a company excursion, like whenever we go do a retreat, to see if we could find a telescope that would be awesome. Yeah, it would be open.
Yeah, because that would fit, because Tara likes to hike, so it would get us out in the middle of nowhere. We could do a night out, you know, tents and telescopes, and getting too drunk to use telescopes, and then getting each other with telescopes.
Yeah.
Which reminds me of my other idea for the next company retreat. So I have two bad ideas, but this is one of them, is a road trip. That we pile everybody into a couple of like campers and we go road tripping. We had to have to fly somewhere interesting where it was like, you know, national parks or whatever. But that could be fun. Making one of us navigate.
I'd be in for that, but I'd feel bad because neither of us drive because we're city folks with Metro cards.
Yeah.
On the other hand, we're the only ones who can always drink, so.
That's right. That's actually kind of a bonus. Suddenly I might have lost my license. What is that? You got another chair over there?
So yeah, that's my chair, and I have just since I redid all the whole house and hardwired most of everything, I just have network equipment. I just shoved most of it in the closet, but it's just all boxes all over the place.
Oh yeah, how's that going? Do you have full wired internet yet?
Mostly everything is wired now. I still need to cut a few more cables, but the whole closet part is done. I got the last piece in yesterday afternoon and plugged it all in. It's all on backup now, so I've got like 4 hours of backup when the network goes down. So yeah,
check you out.
During a hurricane, it helps out a lot to have all that stuff on a backup because you could actually watch TV and stuff. So
cross your fingers, no hurricanes.
What do you do for do you have cable then or DirecTV?
Nothing. We cut the DirecTV off after 15 years earlier this year, so we stream everything.
I was like, how are you getting TV? That makes much more sense.
Yeah.
All right, we'll take one other pair of questions in here. So one person says, does extended logical checks doesn't take longer on databases if it doesn't have index views? It also checks other things, so things that's like persistent computed columns, but there's a few other logical devices that it'll go check. And then also one person says, can you create an index view on top of a view that has multiple joins calling other views? Go hit the Books Online page on index views, and there's a big, huge, long list of limitations. One of them is no self joins, no left outer joins. There's a bunch of things that you can't do inside an index view, so not uncommon there.
They are disappointingly limited.
Yeah.
You have to have a count big.
Yeah. Not a count small, a count big.
Or a regular count. Count big.
Even though they're the same thing under the covers, they both use big ints under the covers. All right, well, thanks everybody for hanging out with us this week, and we will see you next week on Office Hours. Adios, everybody.
Later.